January 6th committee hearings, the focus shifted to Vice President Mike Pence. Um, and I do want to, before we get into day three, I do want to point out it's important, and because sometimes he's been seen in this light. Mike Pence is not a hero. Okay, he did what was right, and the idea that people are saying that that is some level of heroism, I think, speaks more to where we are as a society. That people just doing what they're supposed to do somehow elevates them to some level of heroism. I do think there was a level of maybe some bravery in terms of the people in the Capitol and Pence not wanting to leave and wanting to maintain the appearance of the democracy in the U.S. Certainly, there's some truth to that, but this hero status, I'm not really buying it. What he did do, though, is not succumb to the pressure, which I think was pretty immense on him, and did not make any effort to decertify the election. If he had, democracy in the United States would have been in crisis, and it would have created a constitutional crisis that we really haven't seen in our lifetime, maybe ever. And this pressure came from the very top. President Trump repeatedly tweeting about Mike Pence doing the right thing and being brave enough to do the right thing, and that he had the ability to do it, which was not true. There was even the exchange, which sort of speaks to the juvenile nature of Trump, where he said, basically to Pence, oh, you don't have the power. Well, wouldn't it be cool if you did? And then, telling him later in that same conversation, if you don't do this, I won't be your friend. We were back in middle school. In addition, Ivanka, doing her video testimony, testified that there was a heated phone call between then President Trump and Pence as it related to this idea of being able to overturn the election results and use alternate electors. And after the riot, Trump attorney John Eastman reached out to Pence. Attorney Greg Jacob said he was urging Pence at that point to send it back to the states. Pence rejected that. And earlier, Jacob said that he had told Eastman, because of your bullshit, we're in this situation, meaning the mob actually storming the Capitol on January 6th. Eastman then responded in that conversation that it was on Pence because he didn't do what Eastman and Trump were asking. Jacob then further testified that Eastman admitted on the 5th that he wouldn't want a Democratic vice president to do the same thing he was asking Mike Pence to do, and that he didn't believe that a Democratic vice president in the future or Mike Pence, on January 6th actually legally could do that. Again, Eric Hirschman, who was a White House lawyer, then said that he told Eastman there would be riots if his memo was enacted, and Eastman responded, and I quote, "There's been violence in the history of our country to protect our republic." Again, just further demonstrating that Eastman was okay with what possibly could happen if they were to go ahead with this scheme, which he knew to be not legal and not something that Pence could do. Once the January 6th riot occurred, Eastman then reached out, actually sent an email to Rudy Giuliani. He was asking to be put on the pardon list. This didn't happen. And when Eastman was brought before the January 6th committee, he pleaded the fifth at least 100 times. This pleading the fifth and reaching out to be put on the pardon list, as well as Eastman's comments as they were relayed in the testimony, I think demonstrate he knew that he was up against it, that what he was doing wasn't kosher, and there was going to be a price to be paid for it. According to Jacob, they knew Eastman and Trump were asking Pence to do something he didn't have the authority to do. Jacob asked Eastman if he had relayed this to then President Trump, the idea that he knew that Pence couldn't do this. He said he had, but that, once Trump gets something in his head, it's hard to get out. So basically he was, dead set that this was the path they were going to take. Also interesting to note that earlier in the year, a federal judge, I believe it was in the Ninth Circuit, did issue a non-binding opinion that it was more likely than not that Trump and Eastman conspired and corruptly attempted to obstruct Congress, given their actions before and on January 6th. Shortly after this, a search warrant was issued for John Eastman's phone. This is really a major point, and I'm going to tell you why. To understanding that a search warrant means someone was able to convince a judge that it was likely that a crime occurred and evidence of that crime was going to be found in the area to be searched. So, and it's also likely, given the high-profile nature of the case and John Eastman, that Merrick Garland himself is probably the individual who signed off on the application for the search warrant. So, given that you likely have the Attorney General of the United States signing off on this warrant, And the fact that a judge, believed based on what was presented to them that it was reasonable that evidence of a crime existed on John Eastman's phone. This again just reinforces the idea that they knew what they were doing was wrong.